Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Could it be possible that a large continent existed in the Indian Ocean, populated by 70-foot-tall, multi-armed, blue, human-like aliens who ascended into the fourth dimension through psychic abilities? And if this is true, then it stands to reason that these beings were extremely scientifically and spiritually advanced as well, because they predated Atlantis by 40,000 years. They designed humanity either in biological engineering labs or by manifesting us with their minds, and taught them to develop their consciousness. Easter Island is just a mountaintop on the former continent, and the Easter Island heads contain the clues to unlock psychic energy.
70 feet tall, probably got recruited by an alien team for the Space NBA.
This is going to get weird. How can a civilization simply disappear without a trace? Imagine this civilization was different from our own. They practiced sustainable growth and respected nature, unlike our civilization with exploding population growth and mass extinctions. Their civilization was centered on coastal plains and islands, with a very large urban population and almost non-existent rural population, the same direction our own civilization is headed. They existed for millennia and were well within their digital age, so there would be no paper trail, no books, no need for libraries, since they can teach and gain information digitally, something our own civilization is transforming into. But this would also make them critically vulnerable if they ever lost their infrastructure. No electricity means no knowledge pool to rebuild civilization. And like us, few of them practiced agriculture, and the agriculture they did practice relied on industrial techniques, making the vast majority of them wholly dependent on commerce to feed themselves, like ourselves. Among the people who survived the cataclysm, most would have starved to death in the weeks following. A few would have etched out an existence through savaging as hunter-gatherers and would have passed down orally tales of the cataclysm. The few structures that survived the cataclysm would disappear from decay and scavenged for material. Even the hardiest stone structures are very difficult to identify after so many thousand years, and 10,000 is just one date, since we now know that anatomically modern humans have existed for over 300,000 years. That's a long, long time for something to appear and vanish under sheets of ice. If something existed before the last ice age, or even during it, it would have been wiped clean afterward.
Randall Carlson does a good job explaining how the immense weight of massive glaciation, like the hundreds of tons covering Antarctica, can crush and wipe away any evidence of ancient civilizations, as well as massive flooding. People also forget about how weathering by the elements also contributes to the loss of whatever less could have been left behind. You've got a good imagination and idea.
Any civilization builds near water, rivers, lakes, oceans. If these places existed on the ancient coastlines, then by consequence they would be lost when the world changed. Keep in mind the same thing is about to happen. Our magnetosphere is weakening rapidly. The geomagnetic storm we just received on the 16th in July 2017 wasn't even an M class and blew right through our magnetic field, doubled back and hit us from behind. The fluctuations recorded were astonishing. No proof, but I swear that night as I was watching my compass, north moved 45 degrees.
History of civilization is much older than taught. Advanced civilizations existed 10,000 years before Greece and Egypt. Significant event around 9,600 BC, likely a comet. Crustal displacement theory suggests the Earth's crust sort of sits atop a molten layer, and when hit it shifted. Possible pole shift. Areas once rainy, now deserts. Areas once frigid, now seasonal. Antarctica didn't used to be the South Pole. Atlantis is Antarctica. Civilizations wiped out and dispersed. Flood myths in cultures all over the world are a memory of those events. Evidence for this exists around the globe that actually fits and explains things better than the mainstream historical explanation does.
OPY, I'd start with looking at Maya and Sumerian creation stories. The Maya speak of a city in the east that they came from by sea called Atlan, Sumer from the west. I believe it is the same place. Also, the art at Göbekli Tepe, 11,000 years old, seems to back up the comet theory some other anon posted here. The dates line up.
Yep, even the mainstream picked up the Göbekli Tepe comet connection a few weeks ago. I'm surprised nobody has mentioned the Azores Islands, which is the best theory in my honest opinion. I thought this was more commonly known. Descriptions and supposed location checks out. Huge crack under the sea visible via Google Earth together with the missing land. Attached picture is the first ever gravitational map. That spot is a massive gravitational anomaly. RH blood spread along the coastlines there. Ancient RH Basque people, Berbers and Gaunch, Canary, said they came from there. Odd artifacts on the Azores, supposedly a sunken pyramid off the coast, maybe a hoax or a miscident.
I don't think they existed, or if a place like that did exist, the true nature of that place was so distorted that we wouldn't know if we stumbled over them. They just seemed to be a general warning that if you become too corrupt and decadent, even the most powerful and strong empire can fall from within. They even seem structured like a morality tale and not something meant to be biographical.
Lemuria is a land that imagination forgot. Many will speak of it as legend or as fantasy or even as mythology, and that is perfectly fine. We have no objection. However, Lemuria was real in the physical fact, in the physical world, but it will never be conclusively proved to have been so. No amount of archaeological or anthropological exploration will ever conclusively prove that Lemuria ever existed. Because, you see, Lemuria existed beyond the bridge of belief, beyond the bridge of belief in the realm that God and Goddess and all that is exist. Lemuria was and Lemuria is, past tense and present tense. Lemuria is still real. Even now it is still existing beyond that bridge, and it is only to be found by the individual, only to be found by you, the individual you who is willing to cross that bridge. And it is only to be found by those who are brave enough and courageous enough to suspend the illusion, the physical illusion, and to cross over that bridge of belief into the real, into the metaphysical realness to find the land that imagination forgot, and in that land to find the dreamer. And as you cross the bridge of belief, as you imagine yourself lifting out of the logic and reason of the consensus reality, moving beyond time and space and beyond time-space, you can find that land that is and has been forgotten in imagination. As one were to approach Lemuria by air, it would be located in the Pacific Ocean, far from other land masses to be sure. And one would note first what seemed to be a cloud or a mist that seemed to hang low over the ocean. And out of that mist would poke mountain peaks that would be black rock, a very dark, very black, like coal almost shiny against the soft mist. Indeed, as one would be flying over it in one's journey beyond the bridge of belief, one would perhaps miss it quite entirely, because all that would seem to be there was this innocuous sort of mist, with these mountain peaks that seemed to be sticking through. But as you would descend into that mist toward those black mountain peaks, into what seems to be a black and white reality against the otherwise blue sea, you would emerge beneath the mist and see before you a most glorious land. It was a huge island, an island so large that people could live and die upon it without ever knowing they were on an island. The waters would be bluer than any blue that you have ever seen. An aquamarine blue, a midnight blue, a steely blue, a soft turquoise blue. All kinds of blues, motley shades changing from one hour to another during the day. And along the shore would be the most beautiful sandy beaches. The sand was an almost white sand, almost a glistening sand, almost sparkling. At first you might think it was made of grains of diamond rather than grains of silica. Once you found yourself squarely planted in this most glorious sand, you would notice that all that surrounds you seems somehow brighter, more brilliant than it ought to be. The greens greener, the browns browner, the slate grays of stone, grayer, more brilliant than you would expect, particularly since the entire continent is surrounded in a mist, not a haze, no, not even a fog, but just a gentle, almost imperceptible, but ever-present mist that keeps the edges soft. Shadows are present, certainly so, but they are soft-edged shadows. The sun is brilliant in the sky, and the blue of the sky is blue, absolutely. but always with a gentle mist that seems to accompany it. Yet everything seems to radiate, as if the color and light were coming from the object rather than being reflected upon it. The continent itself is surrounded by the various beaches, and in the very north and very south also by jagged rock, the land meeting the waters very severely in these areas. On the east and west coasts primarily, the beaches give way to lush forests, that in turn give way to the foothills, rolling gentle lands that look almost as though one took a lush green blanket and shook it in the air, and then let it fall as it might. And we would suggest that interior to that, there is a mountain range, a beautiful mountain range that seems to surround the entire continent to protect the interior. For the interior was known as the magic land, the mystic land, and those that would go there were only those who were called, only those who in their dreams or in their mystical explorations were entreated to come would venture there. It wasn't out of fear that others would not go. No, it was out of respect. For if it was not for you to go to the interior, then you would not go there. Therefore, it was in the exterior, the periphery, that the vast majority of the population lived. In the north and the east there were the timberlands. These were beautiful forests, huge virgin forests for the most part, as well as those forests that were cultivated. The lumberjacks, as you might call them now, would cut the timber to sell as their vocation, but they would do so not in a way to destroy the land, to strip it of all the trees. No, they would systematically move from one area to another, to prune the forest in a certain sense so that it might grow lusher and richer, so that it might give a better bounty in years to come. As one moved southward from this timberland, the brilliant trees of timber would give way to the gentle farmland, to the gentle countryside. Here crops were grown and animals were raised and grazed. People gathered together here almost in familial villages, grandparents and their children, their aunts and uncles and nephews and nieces and first cousins and second cousins. They would all congregate and almost create their own villages, interacting with other villages but creating their own, quite independent family units. They were beautiful, beautiful farmlands, gentle, rolling hills, wonderful country lanes that seemed to lay like ribbons across the land. As one moved farther south, the gentle farmlands gave way to mountains, beautiful mountains that would stretch all the way to the sea. And as you would pass through these mountains heading more westward along the southern boundary, you would come to what we call the mining country. This was an area where there was very little flat land, and what there was used for crops and raising animals. The main activity was that of mining precious metals, but also metals that you would now think to be quite innocuous, quite unimportant, that were often used for healing purposes and for mystical exploration. The mining country was a very profitable, very productive area. Indeed, this area would look most like some wonderful area in Switzerland, with valleys that were lost to everyone, above the clouds in that way, and wonderful mountain streams that seemed to bustle their way toward the ocean. It was absolutely breathtakingly beautiful. As you moved farther north toward the true west, you would find jagged mountains with their sharp, austere peaks giving way to high plateaus, high flatlands upon which the savannas existed, wild fields of grass that seemed to stretch forever. Some of this land was cultivated into huge farmlands where grain was grown. It was much like your Midwest and parts of Kansas and Oklahoma, flatland but much higher. High plateau that led to huge cliffs of 100 or more feet that would drop drastically, severely to the water's edge. As one moved farther now into the northern portions, again along the periphery, the flatlands would give way again to mountainous ranges that would be uninhabitable. Raging rivers, grander than any river you might imagine in your world, dumping billions upon billions of gallons of water into the ocean every second of the day. Huge fjords as you think of them in the Scandinavian part of your world, where mountain ranges seem to lift straight out of the ocean, leaving finger-like bays or inlets that were raging with torrents of water. This breathtaking but uninhabitable area leads all the way around to the timber country where we began, in the northern and eastern parts of Lemuria. As we say, most people lived and worked in the exterior lands, knowing of the interior, and knowing of the interior mountains that seemed to ring the civilization. And they knew that beyond those mountains was the magic land, the place where the mystics would learn to become the mystics they were. Often it would be that children, or adults for that matter, but often it would be children, would dream that they should cross the mountains and go to become a crystal climber. Sometimes, as they'd relate the dream, the parents would know what it meant and would take them there. Other times the parents would be totally oblivious to the meaning, curious but not having any answers to it. These would become the travelers, some of them the witnesses, some of them the teachers, some the healers, and some the dreamers. The travelers would come from the interior and seek out those whose destiny called them to come to the interior to become crystal climbers. Indeed, at carnivals and festivals and various celebrations of solstices and equinoxes, the mystics would gather together those that would travel with them. If you were a person so called, either in a dream or meditation or given the message by a teacher, a healer, a witness, a keeper of the flame, a keeper of the truth, or a dreamer. Indeed, you might travel with them for weeks, months, or sometimes even years as you crossed these interior mountains to the interior land. Sometimes it might take as much as a decade before you would finally reach your destination, and the reason that you were called a crystal climber is because in this interior there were pillars of stone. They were like columns of stone, natural of course, not man-made or human-made. That reached up maybe 100, maybe 200 feet above the lushness of the tropical forest that was the interior. On top of the pillars of stone there were cities, huge cities, much as you might imagine Shangri-La or Valhalla must have been. Perhaps the first concepts that heaven was a city of gold, a city of brilliant light, were of Lemuria. For these cities that sat atop the pillars of stone were called crystal cities, not because they were really made of crystal, but because they glowed and glimmered as though they were. Those such as yourself who were called would come and sit at the base of these pillars with that teacher or person who brought you, or sit at the base being called on your own, and you would learn to teleport. You would learn to alter your energy, alter your chemistry, alter yourself such as to visually disappear to those who would be sitting around you, and reappear, rematerialize, in the crystal city that was at the top. You see, there was no other way to get there. There were no elevators, no staircases, no bridges, no little indentations that you could laboriously climb. The only way to get to the top was to teleport. No one had to judge anybody else, because if you couldn't make it to the top, if you couldn't teleport yourself, then you didn't belong there. And if indeed you did belong there, you would be able to learn to teleport yourself. So those who were there were never questioned for their credentials, for the very fact that they were there was credential enough. There were those in that sensing who demanded, insisted that they belonged there. They just knew it. They just knew it. But if they couldn't get there, then no one argued with them. Indeed, their reality reflected the fact that they did not belong. In these crystal cities, you would learn. Some of the cities were cities of healing, others were cities of teaching, others were cities of dreaming. Those who became the inhabitants of these cities, high upon these pillars, learned to do their particular avocation or vocation to fulfill their spiritual destiny. After a decade of traveling to get there, and perhaps 6 or 8 months learning to teleport, you might spend 10, 20, or even 30 years in this city, learning and growing and teaching. And in a certain time there would be those who would know that now they must go back into the world to heal and witness, and guard the light, and gain the truth. And those who dreamed knew that they had to return to their dream. So they would teleport once again, leaving this wonderful crystal city. Once again materializing on the earth, they would go forth into the exterior, not often to where they came from initially, but to where their work called them. The teachers would go and teach, and the witnesses would go forth and witness. And those that were guardians of the light and guardians of the flame would go forth and perform the functions of their guardianship. And those that were the dreamers would go forth and they would dream. Now a dreamer was a very special kind of person, for a dreamer was a person who could dream other people's dreams. And in Lemuria there were those, rare admittedly so, who could dream dreams for you. If you could find a dreamer, you could tell them what you wanted them to dream, and they would dream your dreams for you. They were often very old, yet they seemed to be ageless. They were often very large, yet they seemed to be almost translucent and therefore very light. Sometimes they were very thin and very fragile and frail, yet they seemed almost made of steel and therefore very dense. A juxtaposition of opposites, of paradoxes, is often what the dreamers looked like. Often very old, yet seeming so youthful, often very young, yet seeming so very old. They were a contradiction, a combination, and they would be in a place, often to be found on the other side of a gazebo, and you would go to them when they were ready to receive you, and they would ask you, "What do you want me to dream?" And then you would tell them. They would ask you a series of questions to which you must answer correctly. If you did answer correctly, then they would close their eyes and seem to settle into a deep and wondrous sleep. And then they would dream. They would dream your dreams, and they would dream your dreams into reality. Lemuria is a land that imagination forgot. As you can spark your own imagination, as you can travel on a quest, crossing the terrain of Lemuria to find a dreamer, you too can ask the dreamer to dream your dreams. For dreams exist outside of time and space, and the dreams the dreamer will dream for you will not manifest in Lemuria, but will manifest in your reality, in your world. The dreamer can dream your dreams if you will cross the bridge of belief and journey to the land of Lemuria, the land that imagination forgot. With love and peace. Lazarus.
Evolution of the idea. Originally, Lemuria was hypothesized as a land bridge, now sunken, which would account for certain discontinuities in biogeography. This idea has been rendered obsolete by modern theories of plate tectonics. Sunken continents such as Zealandia in the Pacific, Mauritius, and the Kerguelen Plateau in the Indian Ocean do exist, but no geological formation under the Indian or Pacific Oceans is known that could have served as a land bridge between continents. The idea of Lemuria was subsequently incorporated into the Proto-New Age philosophy of theosophy, and subsequently into general fringe belief. Accounts of Lemuria here differ. All share a common belief that a continent existed in ancient times and sank beneath the ocean as a result of a geological, often cataclysmic change, such as pole shift, which such theorists anticipate will destroy and transform the modern world. For theosophy scammers, Lemuria and MITZU was just another way to exploit the gullibles. A continent existed in ancient times and sank beneath the ocean as a result of a geological, often cataclysmic change such as pole shift. It sure sounds like the story of Atlantis. Oh wait, it is.
Same idea from a different era. Lemuria preceded Atlantis by tens of thousands of years. At some points they were coexistent. I think Lemuria could have been America, or maybe it was in the Pacific like so many claim. The difference is that some of us can actually visit these places. There are other Earths that are the same planet with several things shifted around. Sometimes you see a map of the planet, and there are different continental formations than the ones physically apparent today. These are lands of myth in sort of a crystalline light vibration of matter and energy. Things are more malleable to thought and emotion. You get the sense that the land around you is alive. I have met Lemurians in the astral plane on numerous occasions. They have helped me in dreams and through some difficult drug experiences. I think that we can look at Earth through a Kabbalistic lens where there are different elemental planes. The plane we occupy is Malkuth, the plane of Earth. If you ascend into the plane of water, you are more within what is Lemuria and Atlantis, which are planes of water.
I am not OP. I got into astral projection because I took DMT and wanted to find a way to reach that place without any drugs. DMT is still way over what I can achieve on my own, but I have come a long way so far. I tried traveling to Lemuria because I felt nostalgic longing for it whenever I read about it online. Then I started talking to some fellow starseed friends. One of them knew quite a bit about Lemuria, and she also remembered her days in Atlantis. I decided that I wanted to explore these places because I thought maybe I could meet some beings kind enough to offer love and compassion. I tried numerous times. Eventually, I was able to transfer to a place in Lemuria. It was a group voyage. The person with me went with one of the mermaids I saw, and I followed the other one. We swam through the water. I felt like I wanted to share some feelings and telepathy, but I didn't know how. I saw about a dozen of them sitting under the waves in what looked like some kind of group cuddle party. Their bodies glowed with ethereal orange-yellow light, and they were mostly transparent. I thought the mermaid I was following was incredibly beautiful, but I didn't say anything. I followed for a few minutes. She took me to some seaweed and started singing to it, making it grow. Then I woke up. When I went back to sleep, I was called to some kind of soul review. They were talking to a man telling him of how he had rebelled with his partner, causing a civil war. I felt a lot of shame because I thought maybe they were really talking to a very disassociated version of myself in a past life. Then I woke up. On another visit, I saw two merpeople, one male, one female. Coincidentally, one of them had the same name that I have. They mentioned how I was invited back, but I didn't want to face that collective consciousness again. I thought that they should be more forgiving of something that happened tens of thousands of years ago towards someone from the present day on Earth. On another voyage into the past, I found myself drowning underwater. A mermaid rescued me and took me to her home, where she shapeshifted into human form with legs. I felt very attracted to her, so we made out and did some stuff. I woke up from that one, never to see her again. At that point, I started to realize time traveling wasn't a very good way to find a girlfriend. Then another moment, I traveled deep into the past and found an island nation on the verge of war with one of its neighbors. Uncharacteristically of me, I proposed conflict. I felt like I had Satan whisper it into my ear, and I just repeated his words, captured under a spell. Then I realized that I was in my past again and that I shouldn't be so violent. I was very angry, but it was too late. My friend told me of a dream he had about me burning down his village and pushing them into the water. I didn't remember that one, but I was very sad to learn of it. Another moment, I felt like I went somewhere off the coast of Ireland. I saw women in a temple with a man. Their energy attracted my consciousness enough to stabilize into that reality again, though I didn't need to be birthed. It was more a matter of perceiving a moment in space and time and following it further. Then my twin flame and I flew over the ocean together. She sang some Nightwish-inspired song to me and told me that this moment was about 30,000 years ago. I felt like I was on the verge of memory, channeling music as well. But when I woke up, it all drifted away. One time I was visiting an island nation. It was mostly fourth dimensional. I saw the first friend, that girl I talked about in the previous post. I fled from her because of a fight we had in real life. Then I drowned myself on the bottom of the ocean floor. I can't seem to stay alive in the past for more than a few hours. I still really like visiting those places.
What some fringe archaeology seems to suggest is that there was some kind of culture that predates official known civilizations supported by similar technology, language, architecture, etc. The most official Atlantis reference, I think, is what Plato said to have heard from Egyptian priests. Other than that, the most accepted pro-Atlantis theory suggests that it referred to the Minoan civilization that was destroyed during a volcanic blast. Personally, I'd like to believe there's an ancient sieve buried under the Antarctic ice, but I'm probably wrong about that.
Okay, the next one is really long and jumps the shark over the moon. Proceed with caution.
Since prior to the Lemurian era, higher dimensional cities of light have interfaced with Earth and her human inhabitants. Since the first initiate had his or her first transcendental experience, humans began to have direct connection to these crystalline cities. Perhaps in a meditation or lucid dream, the seeker suddenly finds herself walking out of body up a flight of crystal steps toward a beautiful, light-filled crystal temple. There a light being greets the visitor with a gift of a golden staff, or a robe and crown, or a crystal wand. Words may or may not be exchanged. When the visit is complete, the person returns to waking consciousness, still feeling the energy and light flowing through the body. These visits bring great joy and encouragement on the path. The example I just gave is a simple one compared to the vast possibilities. Yet, it is a typical starting point. Further on in one's path, initiations may be given in the crystalline temples, and eventually the seeker will be invited to come into an entire crystalline city of light. These cities of light are complete with crystalline walls and gates, and often large complexes of temples and various sacred geometry forms. I would like to make you aware of a few of the Earth's City of Light locations and of sacred protocol for accessing them. Mount Shasta is one of the only 2 cities of light currently anchored at ground level on Earth. So let us begin our journey there. When I first visited Mount Shasta, California in 1985, I knew nothing of vortex centers and cities of light. Therefore, I was very surprised when greeted by Saint Germain, whom I had not heard of either. He lovingly told me the source of all of the major areas of problem in my life and what to do about them. When I returned to the campsite and told my friend in ecstasy what had happened, he replied, "Yeah, Mount Shasta is known for things like that. It is supposed to be some kind of vortex center or something." Well, I was convinced. I began regular pilgrimages, during which I always brought a large, clear quartz crystal altar, as I was guided to do. These magical visits continued until I moved here in October 1988. Each visit was better and more powerful than the one before. On one memorable trip in late 1985, my visual interpretations were altered in such a way that everything I saw, people, rocks, and trees alike, appeared slightly geometrically stylized and had numbers written on them. I automatically knew exactly what the numbers meant and had an instantaneous understanding of the major historic details in the life of each person or nature object. I even dreamed in sacred geometry and numbers, without words, as if they were an old and totally familiar language. Saint Germain was there to provide personal life guidance as well. It was in December of 1989 that I finally found out with whom I had been speaking all those years. By then, I had experienced 2 or 3 of the type of crystal temple visits of which I spoke earlier. In 1988, just prior to moving here, I had my first experience of seeing a large crystalline city of light hovering about a half-mile above the peak of Mount Shasta. In the beginning, I saw it only from the outside. Beings of light from the sacred city would communicate with me, take me through activations, give me healings and meditations to do, or just send me love. I was being prepared for the deeper experiences to come. At that time, the Ascended Master's retreat space, inside the tallest of the 2 peaks, had existed for quite a long time. It looks like a gigantic cave with a dome ceiling and a fireplace in the center. Sometimes the Ascended Masters would gather at a long table. At other times, they would sit around the fire or stand in processional form. At times, there was talking, even group discussions, while at other times, we met in silence. Each visit was different and continues to be. Anyone can call on the Ascended Masters of Mount Shasta and ask for permission to come into their retreat. If admitted, an Ascended Master will come to take you in. You will be greeted by male and female Ascended Masters, dressed in long white robes. The Ascended Master's retreat is also the gathering place in Mount Shasta for the Great White Brotherhood, a mystical order of light beings, both human and higher dimensional, who are working on behalf of Earth's spiritual awakening and ascension. When you find yourself inside, try not to have expectations. This will allow you to be receptive to what the Masters deem appropriate for you at that time. You may meet only one being or many. You may notice other humans around or not. Remain open and receptive. Also beneath Mount Shasta is a Lemurian city which has its own temple complex. Again, your admission and personal experience there is very individualized. Many visitors to this Lemurian city are greeted in the round courtyard of the temple complex. It is a very social and joyful place, complete with a large fountain, lots of flowers and benches. The Lemurians tend to hug more than the Ascended Masters and other guides do. You may be invited to tour their homes, library, or a specific temple. Just enjoy. On February 8, 2000, I was greeted in a morning meditation by many members of the Dolphin Star Temple Higher Council of Light. Dolphin Star Temple Mystery School is the one for which I have been the founder and channel. On our Higher Council are several Ascended Masters, the Pleiadian, Syrian, and Andromedan emissaries of light, 2 karmic board masters, Goddess Antares, Hathor and the Hathors, her helpers, Sekhmet, Isis, Thoth, Osiris, Ptah, Mat, Ra, and Anra, and 3 Elohim, Elohim of divine love, Elohim of divine grace, and Elohim of divine innocence. This system is a contemporization of one of the ancient mystery school systems that existed in Lemuria, Atlantis, and ancient Egypt. The masters who approached me on that day informed me that we had built enough multidimensional light and anchoring of higher dimensional energies, that we were being given our own inner sanctuary inside Mount Shasta. The Dolphin Star Temple Inner Sanctuary is now part of the Mount Shasta City of Light. It is a small complex unto itself as well. In order to journey there, invoke 3 times the guardians of the Dolphin Star Temple Inner Sanctuary of Mount Shasta. Tell them you would like to visit the sanctuary and receive any light activations or healings that are appropriate for you on your spiritual path. You do not have to be in the mystery school to be welcomed there. The complex has a central ascension temple, a higher council meeting room, and a library containing pertinent records from the halls of Amenti and the Alexandria Library in Atlantis. There are many healing rooms and chamber of light rooms in which you can receive energy balancing, Kia activations for embodying your higher self, nervous system healing, and all of the chamber of light sessions listed in the Pleiadian workbook. You will be shown by guides which ones you can use and how. There is also a social and music area that looks like a courtyard. A large fountain is centrally located in this courtyard. If you step into it, you will drop through a portal into the courtyard area of the Lemurian temple complex. Mount Shasta is one of numerous sacred sites on Earth that houses a temple of the sun. The others of which I am aware are on the east side of Mount Kilauea on the Big Island of Hawaii, beneath Uluru, formerly called Ayers Rock, of Central Australia, the Great Pyramid of Giza in Cairo, Egypt, the Tor in Glastonbury, England, site of ancient Avalon, Palenque in Mexico, Machu Picchu in Peru. These 7 sites are also chakras in Earth's 13 chakra system. Temples of the sun have traditionally been used as places to hold ceremony on the equinoxes and solstices to assist humans in aligning with the divine plan as it is calibrated with our time cycles, which correspond to orbital cycles. In other words, we realign ourselves with our place within the cosmos, our soul's purpose, and Earth and universal divine plan through our connection to our local sun. Prior to physical birth in each lifetime, our souls pass through the sun. Inside the sun, we leave an imprint of time-released encodings of our purpose for the given lifetime. The sun also imprints our souls with the co-created divine plan for Earth during our upcoming lifetime. When we do ceremonies with the sunrise, high noon, sunset, and midnight aspects of the Earth's daily orbit, we realign with these encodings. You can also look at the sun at any time and ask the sun to assist you in attaining your goals while breathing the sunlight into your body and chakras. As we progress through life and complete goals, the sun releases new encodings to us through its rays that impulse our next goals to be activated in our lives. This sacred relationship has been honored in most indigenous cultures throughout time in various spiritual practices. Lake Titicaca, another of Earth's chakras, contains a crystalline city of light beneath its deep waters. To many seekers who have experienced Lake Titicaca, the City of Light seems more like a space station than a city. That is because, like Mount Shasta City of Light, it is both. These cities of light serve as posts for many higher dimensional light beings from other star systems. Lake Titicaca is the main headquarters for the Intergalactic Federation of Light. This intergalactic federation is comprised of members of the Andromedan and Milky Way galactic federations of light. Milky Way and Andromeda are twin galaxies, also called cosmic twins. Other intergalactic members are from the great central sun, including Elohim, archangels, supreme beings of numerous galaxies, and even large sections of the universe. Centrally located in the Lake Titicaca subaquatic complex is the great central sun temple that connects to the Earth star crystal at the center of Earth at its bottommost point. From the tip of its cone-shaped spire, in the center of this large dome-roofed temple, is a portal that opens into the great central sun. This great central sun temple literally anchors the Earth's connection to the great central sun and to divine source. The other Earth chakras are located at Mount Denali, Alaska, Mount Fuji near Tokyo, Japan, Batur in Bali, Indonesia, Table Mountain near Cape Town, South Africa, and Delphi, Greece. Each has its own city of light with its own function, as do all 13 Earth chakras. At this time, Mount Shasta and Lake Titicaca are the only two cities of light anchored at ground level. The other 11 are etherically located above the physical chakra sites. If you choose to explore these, ask in your meditation or before going to sleep that the guardians of the particular crystalline city of light you wish to visit come and take you there if it is in your highest good at this time. It is inappropriate to rush an initiation or access to high-frequency, multidimensional places unless you are properly prepared and it is your right timing. That is why the crystalline cities of light have guardians to assure your safety and maintain the purity of the sacred space. If you ask 3 times and receive no response, then it is not the appropriate time. The guardians and masters will come for you when the timing is right, once you have made a request. Many crystalline cities of light and individual etheric temples exist beyond what I have named. Just trust that when it is time for you to experience them, your guides will make sure it happens. When physically visiting an Earth chakra, greet the Ascended Masters, overlighting Devas and guardians of the sacred space. Tell them you have come to commune with the light beings in the City of Light and receive from them whatever is appropriate. Also, let them know that you would like to experience and honor the sacred purpose of that space and ask permission to enter. When this sacred protocol is followed, it tends to open your multidimensional access to the beauty and light more deeply. It is also traditional in many spiritual cultures to take a gift, perhaps nuts or chocolate for the nature spirits, or a small amount of cornmeal or whole grain. Only leave crystals when specifically guided to do so, otherwise they may not be appropriate for the site. I love to carry spring water from Mount Shasta and pour a small amount into water sources in other sacred sites to create a sharing and linking of the sites. Whatever you do and wherever you go, approach in the spirit of honoring and sacredness, and the gifts you receive will far outweigh those of the taker.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check the Odyssey and Rumble pages for separate archives of previous broadcasts.